Why dogs roll onto their backs. Your dog has been trying to tell you something every single day, and there's a good chance you've been reading it wrong. It happens in a heartbeat. You walk through the door and your dog drops, twists, and flips onto its back, legs in the air, belly exposed to the world. You laugh, you rub the belly, you move on with your day. But that split-second flip is one of the most information-dense signals in your dog's entire behavioral vocabulary. It can mean trust. It can mean fear. It can mean, please don't hurt me. It can mean, I love you so much I can't stand it. Sometimes it means all three, back to back, in the same 10 seconds. By the end of this, you won't just know why dogs roll onto their backs. You'll be able to watch your own dog do it and understand, in real time, exactly what's happening inside their head. And once you can read that, you'll never look at your dog the same way again. Why this behavior matters. Here is the misunderstanding almost every dog owner shares. We assume the belly-up position means one thing: rub me. It is the single most common interpretation, and it is not wrong exactly. It is just incomplete. The problem is that belly exposure is a posture, not a message. A posture can carry wildly different meanings depending on the muscles around it, the speed it happened at, and what the rest of the dog's body is doing at the same time. Treating every belly-up moment the same way is a little like assuming every time a person closes their eyes, they are falling asleep. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are wincing. Sometimes they are praying. The eyes alone do not tell you. Researchers who study canine ethology, the science of animal behavior in natural contexts, have spent decades documenting exactly when and why dogs expose their bellies. And what they've found is that this single posture sits at the intersection of several completely different systems: emotional communication, physical comfort, evolutionary instinct, and social negotiation. Understanding which system is firing in a given moment is the difference between correctly reading your dog and accidentally making them more anxious. That matters because misreading a fear-based belly exposure as an invitation to pet can actually damage trust. And misreading a genuine, relaxed invitation as something to be cautious about means you might be missing an easy, joyful moment of connection. Getting this right changes the day-to-day texture of your relationship with your dog. There's another reason this matters more than it might seem. Dogs don't have language the way we do. Almost everything they communicate about their internal state, fear, comfort, excitement, and uncertainty comes through posture, movement, and timing. The belly-up position is one of the loudest sentences in that vocabulary, precisely because it's so costly to perform. When you learn to read it accurately, you're not just decoding one behavior. You're building the foundation for reading everything else your dog does, from the set of their ears to the speed of a tail wag. This one posture becomes a kind of training ground for a much deeper fluency in canine body language. The science to understand the role, you have to go back further than the living room floor, back to the ancestors of the domestic dog, and to the basic anatomy of vulnerability. A dog's belly is thin-skinned, lightly furred, and covers most of the vital organs. In the wild, exposing it is a genuine risk. Wolves and wild canids rarely lie belly up unless they're deeply secure in their environment, because the position leaves them unable to flee or fight effectively for a critical second or two. That's not a coincidence. It's the entire reason the posture carries meaning at all. A signal only communicates something if it costs the sender something to produce it. Biologists call this concept an honest signal. Because rolling over is expensive and risky, it's hard to fake, which is exactly why other dogs and humans instinctively trust it. This idea traces back to ritualized behavior in canid social structure, where certain postures became formalized ways of communicating intent without needing to escalate to actual conflict. A lowered body, a tucked tail, a rolled hip, these are part of what researchers call appeasement or deference signaling, and they function like a built-in off switch for aggression. When one dog performs these signals convincingly, the other dog's arousal tends to drop. It's a negotiation conducted entirely in body language, no barking required. But here's where it gets more interesting. Domestication changed the calculus. Dogs who lived alongside humans for roughly the last 15,000 to 30,000 years were shaped by selection pressures that favored calmer, more cooperative temperaments, a process some researchers compare to the domestication syndrome seen in other tame species. Along with physical changes like floppier ears and curlier tails, that selection appears to have expanded the context in which submissive adjacent postures show up. A wolf might roll over almost exclusively during conflict resolution. A dog might roll over during conflict resolution, during play, during a joyful greeting, and during a nap. Because for a dog, humans aren't just potential threats to appease. We're also caregivers, playmates, and sources of comfort. There's also a physiological layer. When dogs interact warmly with a trusted person, including during affectionate touch, their bodies release oxytocin, the same hormone associated with bonding in humans and other mammals. Belly exposure toward a trusted person may be, in part, a behavior that sets up exactly the kind of contact most likely to trigger that response. And then there's a much simpler system entirely unrelated to emotion: thermoregulation. A dog's belly has less insulating fur than its back, flanks, and legs. Lying belly up on a cool tile floor, marble counterbase, or shaded patch of grass increases the surface area exposed to a cooler surface, helping the dog release heat more efficiently. This is a purely physical comfort behavior, and it can look almost identical to an emotional one, which is exactly why context matters so much. But that's only part of the story, because sometimes the role isn't about emotion or temperature at all. Sometimes it's tactical. What your dog is really communicating. Here's the piece most people never learn. Belly up isn't a single message. It's at least 4 different messages that happen to share the same posture. The trust roll. This is the one people picture. Loose limbs, soft eyes, relaxed jaw, maybe a slow tail thump against the floor. A dog performing a trust roll isn't guarding anything. Their body has no tension held in reserve. This version typically happens in familiar environments, with familiar people, after the dog has already assessed the situation as safe. It's less an invitation for a belly rub specifically, and more a full-body statement. I have nothing to defend against right now. The appeasement roll. This one looks similar at first glance, but reads completely differently once you know what to check. The tail may be tucked rather than loose. Ears are pinned back. The dog may avoid direct eye contact or show what trainers call whale eye. The whites of the eyes visible as the head turns away while the gaze stays locked on you. Sometimes there's lip licking or a small whine. This roll is a dog saying, "I'm not a threat, please don't escalate," and it often shows up in moments of uncertainty, meeting an unfamiliar dog, being approached too fast, or during a tense moment with an owner. If a dog urinates a small amount while performing this roll, that's a strong sign the behavior is rooted in stress rather than comfort, not disobedience, and never something to be scolded for. The play roll. During rough and tumble play, dogs often flip onto their backs mid-wrestle. But watch closely and you will notice this version has a completely different energy, fast, bouncy, often paired with an open mouth and relaxed play face. Some researchers who study dog play behavior have proposed that this roll may double as a defensive maneuver, putting all 4 paws in position to block or return a nip while the dog is technically down. In other words, the least dominant-looking position in the fight might actually be a strategic one, the itch and comfort roll. Then there is the version that has nothing to do with emotion at all, the enthusiastic, wiggling, back-and-forth scrub against a rug or the grass. This is grooming and sensory maintenance, working loose fur free, relieving a hard-to-reach itch, or simply enjoying a good scratch on a favorite texture. It is often the role with the most exaggerated, almost comedic energy because there is no social calculation involved at all, just a satisfying scratch. The real skill is not memorizing these 4 categories. It is learning to read the whole dog, tail, ears, eyes, breathing, mouth, in the second before and during the roll, rather than fixating on the belly alone. Common myth. My dog rolls over because they feel guilty. This one deserves special attention because it's almost certainly wrong, and it's one of the most well-studied misconceptions in dog cognition research. Studies on the so-called guilty look have found that dogs display those appeasement postures, including belly exposure, in response to an owner's scolding tone and body language, not in response to their own awareness of wrongdoing. In one well-known experiment, dogs showed the guilty posture just as often when they'd done nothing wrong but were scolded, as when they'd actually misbehaved. What looks like guilt is very likely appeasement, a dog reading tension in your voice and posture, and trying to diffuse it, not a dog reflecting on a decision they made 10 minutes ago. Myth. Rolling over is about dominance and submission in a strict hierarchy. This idea comes largely from outdated studies of captive, unrelated wolves forced into artificial groups, research that many wolf biologists have since revised after observing wild wolf packs, which function more like families with a breeding pair and offspring than a rigid dominance ladder. Applying that old hierarchy model directly to dog behavior oversimplifies what's actually a flexible, context-sensitive signaling system. A dog rolling over isn't necessarily declaring you alpha, they're often just de-escalating a specific moment. Myth. Every belly-up dog wants a belly rub. As covered above, this is true often enough to feel like a rule, and false often enough to matter. Reading the surrounding body language isn't optional if you want to get this right. Where the evidence is genuinely mixed, researchers haven't fully settled how much of the expanded belly-up behavior toward humans is a direct product of domestication-driven changes in temperament versus simply a byproduct of individual dogs learning, through repeated experience, that rolling over reliably produces a pleasant response from their person. Both mechanisms are almost certainly involved, and it's honest to say science doesn't yet have a clean, single answer for exactly how much each contributes. What you should do. The most useful thing you can do isn't a training technique, it's a habit of observation. Before reaching for the belly, take 2 seconds to check the rest of the dog. Look for a loose, wagging tail rather than a tucked one. Look for soft, blinking eyes rather than a fixed stare or whale eye. Look for a relaxed, slightly open mouth rather than a tightly closed one or exaggerated lip licking. If those signs line up, you're almost certainly looking at a trust roll, and a gentle chest or belly rub is likely to be well received. If instead you see stillness, tension, a tucked tail, or the dog freezing rather than wiggling, treat it as an appeasement signal, not an invitation. The kindest response is to stay calm, avoid looming directly over the dog, soften your voice, and let them come back to a neutral position on their own terms. Reaching into pet and appeasement role can unintentionally teach a dog that rolling over doesn't actually stop the interaction they were trying to avoid, which can make the underlying anxiety worse over time, not better. With unfamiliar dogs, never approach a belly-up posture as an automatic green light. It's one of the more common ways well-meaning people get nipped, not out of aggression, but because they've misread a stress signal as an invitation. And if you notice a dog rolling and scratching against the floor unusually often, especially paired with visible skin irritation, redness, or hair loss, that shift from occasional comfort rolling to frequent, almost frantic rolling can be worth mentioning to a veterinarian. It's sometimes an early sign of allergies, dry skin, or parasites rather than a behavioral pattern at all. None of this is about correcting your dog. It's about meeting them with the right response for what they're actually saying. Surprising facts and real-life examples. Some of the clearest evidence for the honest signal idea comes from watching how rarely truly anxious dogs fake a relaxed roll. Trainers who work extensively with fearful or reactive dogs often note that a genuinely loose, wiggling belly-up posture is one of the most reliable indicators of comfort precisely because it's so hard for a stressed dog to convincingly perform. Tension tends to leak out somewhere. A stiff hind leg, a held breath, ears that never fully relax. Compare this to wolves in structured family packs, where belly-up behavior is almost entirely reserved for young pups interacting with parents, or for genuine reconciliation after conflict. Domestic dogs, by contrast, have been observed performing the same posture during ordinary greetings, casual play, naps and grooming, an enormous expansion in the range of situations where the behavior appears. That range itself is a kind of evidence for how thoroughly domestication reshaped canine emotional expression. There's also a quietly funny wrinkle in the itch relief version of the role. Some dogs develop strong texture preferences, consistently seeking out one specific rug, one patch of grass, or even one particular corner of a wood floor for their scratching sessions. A small individual quirk that has nothing to do with social signaling and everything to do with simple sensory satisfaction. And perhaps the most quietly moving fact in all of this, because belly exposure requires giving up the ability to defend yourself instantly, a dog offering that posture to a person is, at a biological level, making a small bet on that person's trustworthiness, one they've usually made hundreds of times before you ever noticed. It's also worth noticing how individual this behavior can be from one dog to the next. Some dogs roll over the instant a familiar person walks in the door, every single time, like clockwork. Others almost never do it, even with an owner they clearly adore, simply because their temperament expresses trust through different channels, leaning against your legs, resting their chin on your knee, following you room to room. The absence of the belly roll isn't a sign of a weaker bond. It's just a reminder that, like people, individual dogs have their own dialects within a shared language. Final takeaway. The belly up flip looks like the simplest thing your dog does. It isn't. It's a compressed, split-second summary of how safe your dog feels, how much they trust the room they're in, and how comfortable they are with you specifically, layered on top of purely physical needs like temperature regulation and a good scratch. Once you start reading the whole dog instead of just the belly, the behavior stops being a cute reflex and starts being a conversation. And the more fluently you can follow that conversation, the less mysterious your dog's daily behavior becomes, which is really just another way of saying the bond between you gets a little stronger every time you get it right.